Before we get started with this week's show, I just wanted to say I had the pleasure of joining the In That Number podcast as a guest this week. It was a pleasure to be on with Ray and Kevin and just get to talk more about Saints. And we recorded that episode about 10 seconds after I finished recording this one with Lucy. So it's already out. The link is in the show notes so you can find it if you don't listen already. It's the In That Number podcast. That's a pleasure to be on with Ray and Kevin. And you should check it out if you haven't already. So now here's the show.
You're listening to the Southampton Delivery Podcast, a podcast dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans.
If you want to have guarantees, you have to buy a wash machine. We don't lose a match, either we win or we learn. And today we learned.
It's infield to Mane, 25 yards out. Lovely ball for Pella. Onside, 1-0. Boom, shot. Oh my word!
Unbelievable. We ran around the pitch like Bambi on ice. It was very, very embarrassing to watch.
And now, your host, Matt Markstone.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Southampton Delivery Podcast, a podcast and newsletter dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans. As always, the show is available right here on southamptondelivery.com. My name is Matt Markstone. I am the host of the show. And no matter where you are, no matter how you may be listening, whether this is your first time or you've been here before, thanks for making the show a part of your day. I hope that you enjoy it. And on episode 117, Lucy Highnett will join me to talk about Saints' loss to Liverpool on Friday evening. Now, of course, we always want the team to win, but Liverpool's only lost once all season. It would be kind of foolish for us to expect a win from that match, but the game that we played, the way that we went about it, I don't think anybody has anything to hang their heads about. And I actually really, really enjoyed it, even though I had to watch it after I already knew the result, because 8 o'clock kickoffs for you, 8 p.m. kickoffs for you, noon for me on a Friday means I have kids in the room and all of that stuff. But that is okay. That is beside the point. But I hope that you enjoyed the match, even though, despite the result, I guess. And I hope that you enjoyed my conversation with Lucy Highnett. And special thanks to her for joining the show this week. It is always a pleasure to have her on. You can follow her once again on Twitter at Lucy Highnett. The links to that are in the show notes. But before we get into that conversation, we do have an announcement. And that is, last week, we agreed to give a copy of Desire, Dream, Vision by last week's guest, Michael Kern. The book has just been released. It's been out just over a week now. But we agreed to give a copy of that book away. So to do that, you could have liked any of the posts on any of the social media sites. All of the Patreons were also entered into that drawing. And this time it goes to a patron by the name of Ordinary Mike. So, Mike, if you're listening, get in contact with me. I will ship you out a copy of the book. And thank you to everyone who took part. And if you do want to buy a copy of the book for yourself, you can do that at desiredreamvision.com. I will put the link again in the show notes now, just in case you like to do that. So special thanks to everybody who took part. Sorry if you didn't win. There will be more books in the future, especially because I've done the whole Marie Kondo thing. Let's get to my conversation with Lucy Highnett about Liverpool, about life, and everything else. We'd like to welcome back to the Southampton Delivery Podcast, Lucy Highnett. You can find her on Twitter at Lucy Highnett. Lucy, thanks for coming on the show. Welcome back. And although Saints lost, it's, a match against Liverpool was never going to be the ideal talking point or match to talk about, I guess. But I don't think we can complain about too much in terms of performances.
No, I think it was pretty much as we expected. Maybe at some point in the game we thought it might end up a bit better than it did, but I thought it was pretty much consistent with what we've seen before. So I don't think there's any reason to be negative, but looking forward to talking about it.
Yeah, I think it's, I was explaining to you, I didn't get to watch the game live. I had a kid shout out in class like, "Oh, Mr. Markson, I'm so sorry." And I was like, "Why?" He's like, "Well, Liverpool just scored." And I was like, "Cool, I haven't seen the game yet." And he's like, "Oh." And the whole class like kind of yelled at him a little bit, which made me feel good because they were standing up for me. But it was I've now caught up and watched most of it, so we'll kind of see how it goes. But before we do that, I have to kind of ask you about your household, because you and your husband support different teams. And last year, both of those teams were in the relegation zone. Both of those teams managed to stay up. But this year, given that, Newcastle is doing a little bit better and we're at least playing better, are things a little bit more calm and not as much stress between the two of you in terms of football?
Yeah, I think it's quite good that we're not really we seem to have got a bit above the relegation zone, seem a bit more comfortable, and Newcastle haven't really been kind of in the conversation for quite a while. So it's meant it's a bit less awkward talking about football, because I think there was this tone last season where we were pretty much like, well, I don't want to go down, but if you have to go down so I don't have to, that's fine. So it's been better now for tension in the house. So yeah, it's been quite good. We haven't kind of got to as many Newcastle games as we kind of intended to, and it's always that kind of tension, especially as Tom's the driver in our house, as to what we go and see.
Okay.
And it's often my dad, who's also a Saints fan, who kind of persuades him to come to a Saints game. So I feel a little bit bad that we go to St James's Park as much as we should be, but can never go to away games for Newcastle because their support's so good that all the season tickets buy the tickets, and we've got no. So yeah, but no, it's been definitely good.
You guys do live up that way, right? Up towards Newcastle?
Well, yeah, so we're a couple of hours away, which to you probably doesn't sound like very much. To us, we're just kind of lazy. So often there are away games for Saints that are nearer than Newcastle, so we often end up going to those.
Yeah.
That said, we were going to go to Saints away at Newcastle, and sit in opposite ends like we did last season.
Yeah.
But I'm still struggling after the scarring experience of last time where they beat us 3-0. And also we're in the other end of the country for our holiday next week, so I don't think we're going to get to that one.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I'll be honest that when I looked at my spring break, and it was Saints away to Newcastle, I kind of said, am I going to pay the money? Because last year when we bought tickets over, we got really good airline deals. I think because spring break and Easter were so much earlier. I think, weather's not as nice. Things were, and so flying over there was a lot cheaper than it was this year when I looked. And then I looked and said, well, I'm going to have to land somewhere probably near Southampton or London and go to Southampton. And then I'm going to have to go to the opposite end of the country. And I just said, I'm not sure I want to cram all that into 4 or 5 days. So I just chose to save the money and plan for next year. So I hope everybody's okay with that. My wife seems to be okay with that. So I think, and my checking account says that's okay too. So
that's okay, yeah. So you probably got overruled on that one then.
Yeah, and we had a fence fall down during a storm, so that was not. Believe it or not, fences are expensive. I don't know what they cost in the UK, but they're not cheap.
How expensive fences are. You just think, I'll just stick a fence up, but it's a bigger deal than you think.
Yeah, so, yeah. It's not my favorite. But anyway, well, I'm glad everything's going well. I think I'm going to wind up seeing an Arsenal game over the summer for that international Champions Cup. Because my son is an Arsenal fan, so I think they're playing Bayern Munich in LA. So I think that will be the game the Premier League team that I see this year. Unfortunately, but that's okay. Yeah,
and it should be a good game, that you would think, wouldn't you? I'm a big Unai Emery fan, so I've got no problems with watching Arsenal.
Yeah, I always hope that somebody makes. I mean, there's no big men's tournament this year, so that we should have everybody there. And if somebody makes a new signing, they should be trying to force themselves into the team, so that should be good for the viewing purposes. Last time I watched, I saw Man City play Real Madrid last time, and then the time before that, I saw Liverpool against Chelsea, and I saw Cesc Fabregas get a straight red in a friendly, which was interesting to say the least. But anyway, and then. Also, I think last time we talked, you were already technically Dr. Highnett, but how's it going not writing a dissertation? Yeah,
I've got to say it's a bit of a relief. It was quite a slog by the end, just sitting there writing. So yeah, it's quite nice to do a job where you're not thinking about what you're going to write in your thesis all the time, and kind of switching off at the weekend. And it meant I've actually got to way more Saints games than I did last year, just because I'm no longer having to use my weekend for writing. So
right.
Yeah, it's been good fun, really. Not sure what kind of career plans are at the moment, but it's nice not to have to cry myself to sleep wondering what I'm going to write. So All good.
One of the things I always talk to the kids about, because I think I was raised like, you have to have a career and it's got to be, all of this stuff, and you should do, I don't know, you should just work a lot. And I try to tell my students now, like, it doesn't really matter what you do. Like, do something you enjoy, or have something that you really enjoy that you do outside of work, and have a job that just allows you to do those things. Like, you got to kind of do, I think, what makes you happy, at least a little bit. And it can't always happen, but the stress of writing something like that, I don't think I could do it for more than a year or two. And then, because then it's done, and then you move on and you do something else. And I don't understand how these people just go from one giant book project to another book project or whatever. That would just the thought of that stresses me out. But as my wife says, the thought of, having this deadline with the podcast every week stresses her out. So she doesn't know how I do it either. So I guess it's all just different stuff for different people. So
yeah, we all have our different passions, don't we? So I think it just depends what you get used to and what you kind of can manage. Yeah. Well,
looking at the team, I mean, Friday night games, it seems like first off, it just seemed like the fans in the stadium was really up for Friday. I got to watch a little bit of the first half during my lunch, and the students came in and saw who was playing and just said, "We won't bother you." And I said, "Thank you very much." And so some of them came in and watched with me, but for the most part, the fans seemed up for it. The stadium seemed like the atmosphere was good, which is nice. Van Dijk got booed every time he touched the ball, which is great. But the starting lineup, were you surprised at all that we went back to kind of a back three or a back five for this? Or, I mean, to me, it wasn't necessarily that much of a surprise with Vestergaard back healthy, and given kind of what Liverpool were going to do in terms of attack, I thought it was the kind of the right approach. But I don't know, what did you make of the formation change, since we did win playing with the back four the previous week?
Yeah, I think pretty much as soon as we knew Vestergaard was going to be fit, I kind of assumed it would be a back five. Not just because I think we look a bit more solid when we have a five, but when you're playing someone as inexperienced as Jan Valery on the same wing as probably Sadio Mane, the form kind of attacker in the league at the moment, I think he needed that kind of support inside him, and I think it made a lot of sense. The kind of the question I had about the starting lineup was really Shane Long coming in. I knew Danny Ings can't play against the parent club, but the Shane Long being in the starting lineup again was a bit of a shock, particularly kind of when it was at Armstrong's expense, when I thought he'd been really good against Brighton and looked very kind of creative and forward thinking. But I guess when Shane Long scores a goal, I probably can't complain about him being in the starting lineup.
Yeah, it was. I don't know. I guess when I was thinking about it, when I saw him in there, you understand the game plan, I guess, and you want him to press. And I wasn't expecting him to score, and it was I think it was his 50th Premier League goal, which is hard to imagine because it doesn't feel like he ever scores, but I guess he has at some point.
Well, yeah, and there was that season under Coon, isn't there, where he did score 10 or 11 or something.
Uh-huh.
So that gave a good boost. But yeah, no, when that stat came up, my husband just said, well, that's what happens when you play in the Premier League long enough. Yeah. And I was like, well, does say it all, really.
Yeah, well, he's definitely not getting to 100, so that's probably the milestone he's going to get to. Yeah. And I think I was looking it up because somebody was talking a lot of crap about one of our players. I'm not going to mention the name of the Twitter account, but, and then he compared him to somebody who, was just worked really hard. And I was like, well, there's like the list of people who have scored over 100 Premier League goals is not very long. And the guy he was comparing him, Redmond, to was on that list. And I was like, I could just engage with this, but I don't think that's what I want to do. So I just let it go. But, looking at the number of people who have scored 100 goals in the Premier League, it's not a very long list. So anybody who gets there is great. 50 goals, good for Shane Long. That list is much longer.
Yeah, definitely.
But I mean, to start with the game, I mean, your expectation wise, there seemed to be a bit of optimism floating around. I know you did a podcast, a Liverpool podcast last week. I did the Anfield Index which was a good experience, kind of last minute, but just fine. Actually recorded on a preparation period at school, which I think I'm allowed to do, but I'm not sure. But like for you, I mean, when they ask kind of what I felt about the game going into it, you know, Liverpool quality wise just have a better team. They've been together for longer. They've had the ideas and kind of the game plan longer than we have, but we were playing well. Seemed to play well against teams who want to play or who bring kind of the pressure to us and allow us to play our game that fits a little bit better. But in my head, it's like, well, you know, this should be a Liverpool victory, but I don't know. I was oddly optimistic maybe that we could have done something and at least given them a game, which I think we did. But for you, I mean, was it kind of the same thing, or were you, I guess, probably more pragmatic than I was in your way of thinking about the match?
Yeah, I'm kind of an eternal pessimist, so I couldn't help it when they said to me, we went through like what I expected the team to look like and then how I thought we'd deal with Liverpool. And then at the end of this interview I had with this Liverpool journalist, I had, so what are you expecting the final result to be? And I said, well, probably a 3-1 Liverpool win, which, you know, was unfortunately right. And I could feel this kind of disappointment that so I hadn't been a bit more bullish in what I'd said. And he was like, but you're playing really well. And I was like, yeah, we are. But, you know, I think there's a difference between us playing really well kind of from the context we were in earlier in the season versus, you know, taking down a title challenger when there's kind of so much going on. So it was kind of broadly what I expected. It was much more even for longer than I expected. So if anything, I really did underpitch the whole thing. But I thought there were you can still lose to Liverpool and take positives from it, which was, you know, so different from the story when we played them at Anfield and kind of just got battered for 45 minutes and then shut up shop and thought 3-0 was a good result. So, you know, it wasn't what we hoped it would be necessarily, and probably not what we all would have loved. But you know, it was very much in the shape of the other games we've watched, and I think Hasenhüttl, from a tactical perspective, kind of got it as right as he could have, given the resources that kind of at his disposal.
Yeah, I mean, and like you said, the result up at Anfield, there's only one goal difference now, and if you look at it, it's 3-0 to 3-1, but the game was much different, and we looked like we were in it for a long time. They looked uncomfortable for portions, and we made them work for it, and I think 2-1 would have been a fair reflection of the game, maybe. The third goal, I think, just happens as we press forward a little bit and try to equalize, which I'm okay with. It happens, and of course, Salah decides to score, jumping ahead to their 3 goal scorers. Keita hadn't scored for them ever. Henderson hadn't scored for them in a really long time, and Salah, you know, for as much as everybody says he's having a bad season, he's not really having that bad of a season. He just hadn't scored in a little while. So it was I don't know. It's kind of what you expected, like you said, and I don't think we can be upset about much. But yeah, I mean, Van Dijk getting booed towards the beginning of the game, and basically every time he touched the ball after that, totally expected. I think if there's anybody that Southampton fans dislike more than Dejan Lovren, it might be Virgil van Dijk. And as good as he is, and as much as I enjoy watching him play football, just as a footballer, because he's good and he's smooth and he does all of these things that you know I wish I could do when I play, and I can't. It's easy to hate him a little bit for the way he left.
Yeah, I don't think it's any shocks when Virgil van Dijk gets booed. And yeah, I think you might be right. Dejan Lovren was the big hated guy, but he, you know, Van Dijk's conduct in the way he left was as bad as Lovren's, and you actually miss him playing for your team. So it's a double combination of stuff. Whereas Dejan Lovren, there was always this kind of I can't believe he left us, but at least he turned out to be terrible, and 20 million looked like a great deal. Whereas now, all I seem to hear is, wasn't Virgil van Dijk a bargain for 75 million? And look how good he is, and blah, blah, blah. So, you know, that makes me want to hate him even more, I have to be honest. Yeah, if you're going to behave like that and then be that good, then, you know, I think a a good firm booing has never been a problem.
Yeah, and then there was that one point late on where he went up for a header and JWP just kind of undercut him a little bit. And I don't know. I don't like to see anybody get hurt, but I did enjoy that a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. You know, he wasn't really that badly hurt, so I think we're allowed to enjoy it a bit. I did also think that incident did sum up the idea that the ref actually had no idea what he was doing the whole game. Really summed up by the fact we were given a goal kick. Some Liverpool players shouted at him, so he gave a corner. I mean, I was just like, do you have any idea what you're doing?
No.
I didn't think so.
And on that VVD thing, he played advantage for us.
Yeah.
And then called it back and gave them a free kick. And I was just like, oh, this is great. This is awesome.
For a minute, I thought I'd completely misunderstood. I was like, oh, he's played for us. And then they came back in. I was like, have I just not? No, actually, no, it's just he has no idea.
Yeah.
Not me.
Yeah, no, because you see it happen and you go, well, that's a foul. And then and then it's like, well, maybe not, you know? And then I have no idea. I have no idea what he was doing. I'm glad. Well, I mean, I can't say the linesman did either, because somebody I think it was the In That Number podcast, they were joking around saying, you know, looking at the line for Salah when he was offside for their equalizer, and you know, I was like, well, I think the linesman played him on. I think he must have thought that was okay, because it's the same linesman who made that foul call, which he made the right call on the foul on JWP, I think there, but completely wrong on the offside thing.
Credibility by that point, so the ref was like, well, you can't be right because you weren't right earlier. I don't know.
But I mean, so let's just kind of look at the early goings of the game. I mean, coming into it, we knew that Liverpool were going to probably dominate possession, and they did. But I think Saints did what they do best. They forced mistakes. Saints put Liverpool under a lot more pressure than I think maybe they were used to. And we were kind of up for all of the individual battles all across the pitch and pretty organized. And I'll be honest, I was pretty shocked when we got the first goal. I was not necessarily expecting that. And my kids were taking a test. I did have it on my screen in the top corner, and I let out some words I won't use here when it went in, and all the kids looked up at me, and I just went like, sorry. And they all went like, what are you doing? I was like, well, I'm watching the game. And they just all kind of laughed and went back taking their tests, and that was fine. But I wasn't expecting that goal to go in. I wasn't expecting to be on top so early. I thought if we were going to score, it was going to be late. And I don't know, like it seemed like it was all going too well for the first 15, 20, maybe even 30 minutes. Yeah,
it was a really good start to the game. And I think we have to be realistic about when you set up against teams like Liverpool, that you will, you might press the ball quite hard in their third, but when they come into attack, there is, a kind of necessity that you will drop deep. And we have seen so many teams line up against Liverpool, play quite expansively, and with their pace up front, they will, any space in behind, they will be right on top of that. So I could see why, we tended to be quite deep. I think people got quite frustrated with that, especially like when we stopped being such a threat in an attacking area. People were like, why are we, dropping deep? We need to do more. And the fact is that the defensive line is always going to be quite deep against Liverpool, because without the quality, and even like Man City have been done for that, even with their quality, you're going to end up being quite direct with the long balls, which I think was why Long played, because we just basically hoofed the ball up and just told him to run after it, and see what we could get from that. I think maybe Keita and Fabinho not playing that much football recently played into our favour. I thought Højbjerg looked particularly good against them in terms of kind of snapping at their ankles, taking the ball off them, really kind of getting in their faces. And then I think they really struggled with us down our left, their right. Trent Alexander-Arnold didn't have the best game, I didn't think. And Bertrand and Redmond really linked up well at times. Thought Bertrand put in some really good balls. And it kind of, as the game wore on, it did seem to be kind of our left versus their left in a way. We looked weaker down one side and they looked weaker down the other.
Yeah.
And that was kind of how it was going to play out, I think. Yeah,
it seemed like Mane was starting to get the better of Valerie eventually. But Bertrand and Redmond were having a lot of joy against down our left-hand side, like you said. And then, I mean, Klopp kind of chose to shut that down and brought Milner in, and that kind of changed it. And then also when we brought Long off and had to move Redmond more centrally, Sims didn't have as much luck down that side. And then eventually we switched to a back four as well. And that at that point, I think it was trying to get a goal, which was positive. I think that was really, really good on our part, is not just going, well, it's going to be 2-1 and we're just going to try to hold it for goal difference. You know, it was like, well, there's really nothing to lose here. You go try to do something, and they eventually get the third, which I don't necessarily think they deserved. And we were talking beforehand, I really wish anybody, well, not anybody. There's a lot of people on that team I don't want to score against us, but Henderson would have been one of them for me. But that's I guess that's just how it goes. But I mean, yeah, I just have to say, like, I was really, really impressed with for the most part how we played. I think a lot of our players just kind of stepped up and were ready for this game. And you just kind of think if we did that more often, if we were able to do that under, you know, previous management, we'd be in a much different position at this point in the season.
Yeah, definitely. I think there was so much hunger, I think, which really showed. And disappointingly, I think it was, as we said, on our kind of right side of our defence, Valerie and Bednarek. I think perhaps their inexperience showed a little bit, and that was kind of part of why it all went a bit negative after a while. I just think on the Cater goal, Bednarek just misses his header, and I've watched it 3 or 4 times now. I still don't understand why he doesn't head the ball, and when you look at him back, he still can't quite understand how he didn't get it. And I thought, yeah, Valerie was caught out quite a few times, and I think that's inevitable when you play wing backs, that occasionally, especially when you're playing such high intensity football, your wing back will get caught the wrong side of the attacking winger, and I think that's something that maybe Valerie sometimes needs to kind of think about, timing his runs and when those runs happen. And I'm not going to be critical of either of them, because, you know, a big part of what's happened under Hasenhüttl has been kind of just throwing these young players in and then making them kind of learn quickly. And that hasn't always been a flawless experience, thinking kind of particularly about Valerie sending off at Leicester.
Uh-huh.
And I think they've generally done really well, and I wouldn't have expected them to do much better than they did. But I think that was probably one of those areas where our kind of inexperience in defence in particular was a kind of undoing of us kind of as the game went on.
Yeah, I think you think about how he started under Hasenhüttl with, I think, the matchup at Cardiff, over at Cardiff, I don't know exactly how to do it. But anyway, the match against Cardiff, he didn't play particularly well. He got kind of eaten alive, and I think had to be brought off eventually. And since then, he's improved so much, and he's always looked better in a 5 than he has in a 4. And he's very good going forward. And he's been, you know, I'm not sure we've missed Cedric at all with him. And there are going to be games, though, when you come up against a winger who just kind of has your number, and you got to think, you know, if there was talk earlier this week of you know, him at some point cleaning Mane's boots and all this stuff as a youth team player, and I think that's something that happens at most places. But you think just Mane just can come in, and it's not like, I think every other winger comes in and doesn't know anything about him, and Mane's kind of seen him develop, and maybe he's a different player now, but Mane probably it's just the little bit more confidence that Mane needed to just, you know, go and run at him and do those things. And Mane's been one of Liverpool's best players this season. Even when he is inconsistent sometimes in front of goal, he's been really, really dangerous. And that wasn't any different this week. He chose to do those things again and was able to do those things again. And he's a lot faster than Bednarek. And when Valerie was caught forward, that was just going to be difficult for Bednarek to stay with him. And that's, you know, like you said, it's just part of the inexperience and the youthfulness in the side. And, you know, one more season to develop that and that partnership and that formation, I think we'll be okay.
So about the formation, you say kind of like building experience in a formation. I get the sense that Hasenhüttl was kind of eager to go to that 4-2-2-2 that he so often talks about. And I think, you know, the sort of thing he tried at Brighton. So I'm not sure how much opportunity they'll get to kind of build that kind of understanding in that formation, and that kind of does concern me about Valerie going forwards, because as you quite rightly said, he does look so much more comfortable in a 5 where he has that attacking freedom and there probably isn't quite so much scrutiny on him defensively. And so I kind of wonder if we do switch to a back 4, which seems to be kind of the long-term plan, kind of how comfortable Valerie will be. But I'm sure it's something that will get better with experience, with coaching, with game time, and hopefully they'll have kind of pre-season to really get to the kind of nitty-gritty of the tactics and the setup, which I don't think Hasenhüttl's really ever had much chance to kind of really analyse and kind of really get into, apart from perhaps this kind of 3-week gap we've just had, which was why I think he tried that 4 against Brighton, because he'd had that time to kind of think about tactics in a kind of deeper way. The only thing is about that, I don't know how the defence will look next season. And that brings me on to Yannick Vestergaard, who I actually thought had a really good game for someone who is 6'6" and, well, I mean, he's basically a human lorry, isn't he? He doesn't really have movement. He's kind of just a big guy. And I have to say, before the game, I was thinking Salah's pace against Vestergaard could be really painful.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought Vestergaard was really good at being, at kind of reading the game and being very aggressive, kind of quite high up the pitch, which I think takes quite a lot of guts when you know if you get turned, you won't recover. I thought he was actually really good. And I think a lot of the criticism of him has been quite unfair. I'm not sure he's been the signing people thought he would be. But I think a lot of what he's done has been really good under Hasenhüttl, especially after that awful mistake in the Cardiff game when Hasenhüttl first came in. I think he's done really well to turn things around for him. But again, going back to kind of tactical changes, I'm not sure he would work in the Premier League consistently in a back 4 because of that lack of movement. And then that kind of again gets you back to the kind of our approach to recruitment if we're buying players that only really work in a certain system. But yes, I feel like I've just rambled about tactics for a while there. But I think it'll be really interesting next season in terms of what kind of happens to the shape of the team.
Yeah. You bring up a good point, is that I think I guess the ultimate goal would be to go to a back 4. I'm, I guess, just a little bit hesitant simply because I'm not sure how that looks. I'm not sure, like you said, with the players we have, if that does it, and which center back gets dropped if everybody's healthy and we do go to a back 4. You imagine Bednarak stays in. Yoshida's been pretty good this season. He's been kind of the common influence, and he is the most senior defender on the team now. And he's also, I think, the fastest of any of the center backs we have by far, especially with Vestergaard back there. But you wonder, because Vestergaard was able to play in a back 4 in the Bundesliga, which I guess I always have just assumed it was a bit of a more kind of rough and tumble, wild kind of a league, which meant there was a lot more running and stuff like that. But I just don't think it's quite as intense, and I don't think you come up against the quality of player week in, week out that you do in the Premier League, where there is always somebody that can beat you a couple of different ways, even on teams like Brighton or Cardiff or anywhere else.
Yeah, I think so. I think there are frailties. But as you said, I don't think any of the 3 centre-backs, I think all 3 centre-backs have been good. I don't think any of them have been outstanding, and I don't think any of them have been hugely consistent. So with Bednarak, that probably comes from a lack of experience. But with the other 2, I don't know kind of what you pick or what you do about that. And I think also you have to face up to the reality that Yoshida probably doesn't have that long left of his career. Right. I'm not saying he's retiring soon, but if the big kind of vibe from Hasenhüttl is kind of investing in the future, does Yoshida kind of fulfill that? But then you probably can't leave him out with what you have left, which again probably comes back to what we do in the transfer window. But it feels like we've been trying to sort out our centre back issue for 2 or 3 years now and not really got it right.
Yeah, I have no idea what's going to happen in that, and it's going to be a little bit weird, but we got to do something eventually, because I don't think you can just stay stagnant with what we have there. It doesn't really look like Jack Stevens is going to be in the plans for Hasenhüttl now, nor does it look like a lot of our loan signings, especially the guys he sent out, like Wesley Hood. I don't think he's coming back to the team at any point and getting his way back into it. He's not. I don't think he's impressing anybody on his loan spell, really. So it's going to be a difficult one for him to come back and do that. But I think just looking kind of overall at the match, long scores, we pressure them, we play, I think, the game that we wanted to play, and we're right there in it until the very end, until that third goal goes in. And ultimately, one thing that I wrote down in my notes is like, this is the team that I kind of fell in love with a couple of years ago now. Like this is the type of team that doesn't give up, that is in your face, that is, putting in challenges. Romeu was kind of all over the place. I just love at one point we were just sliding into everything, and balls just basically, the ball spent more time in the air than it did kind of being passed or dribbled or anything else. Just because we wouldn't let them stand on it. And it was awesome. I think, it's crazy as it looks to watch sometimes. And some people might say, that the term agricultural was thrown around for some of the challenges and stuff. I think that's a bit harsh, but I mean, I was just really enjoying watching the game, and I couldn't help but be excited, even though, like, as I told you, I was up at 3:45 this morning watching the second half. So it's, I don't know. I don't know if you got that feeling watching it on Friday night or not, or if I'm just kind of being nostalgic about it, but I really enjoyed the match, even though we lost. Yeah,
absolutely. I had a good time watching it. I have to say, I found 1-1 quite a tense experience. So I did a lot of just sitting there, like, in total silence, and my husband gave me these looks like, "What's wrong with her?" It was just like, "Come on, you can do this." But no, I thought it was really, really good. And as you said, like, it's quite nice to watch an aggressive team, a team that kind of, they may not always have the quality, they may not always be able to kind of go toe to toe for kind of attacking ability, but they kind of get in people's faces and make it awkward for them. And I think in many ways, Pierre Højbjerg has been the kind of symbol of that, in terms of being very aggressive, being very loud, and getting kind of right in there, and has actually kind of contributed quite a lot from an attacking perspective, simply because he's got such kind of determination to get onto things and do things you probably didn't expect him to do. I thought, that breakaway goal at Brighton, it was so kind of emblematic of what he's been in terms of kind of box to box engine, and kind of pushing, even when you probably didn't think that that's where he should be on the pitch. And similarly for that flick on for Long's goal, I kind of was like, where did he come from? But no, it's been really good to watch. And there was quite a lot. I found there was a kind of subsection on Twitter, certainly, of people that were like, I wasn't really pleased with the way we kind of played on the counter like that. And I think there needs to be a certain degree of realism about what this team can do with the resources it has, given how bad the recruitment has generally been in the last couple of years. I think there needs to be a degree of kind of realism about how we set up. We are not going to have a lot of the ball against Liverpool or teams of that ability, and it's about doing what you can with the ball when you get it. I think there were times in that game where we were slightly naive. We were kind of so aggressive and so wanting to make the most of opportunities that we probably fatigued ourselves quicker than we needed to, because we would just push that ball as quick as we could and go as direct as we could. And I think there were opportunities to maybe take your foot off for 5 minutes, hold possession for a little bit, and give yourselves a kind of breather. Because I think Bertrand tried to do that kind of late on in the game when he got booked for delaying a couple of throw-ins, because you could see he was just trying to give the team kind of take the pedal off a little bit, give them all a bit of a chance to kind of take a breather, kind of get their brains back into kind of the right shape and think about what they needed to do. And I think there were times when other players probably should have done the same thing, and they kind of made things all a little bit too much of a strain. And I think that was partly why we faded out of the game so badly at the end. Not just because of the tactical switch, which I have to agree with you, I was totally in favour of. You might as well go for it, because if we are to get relegated from this league, it certainly won't be on goal difference.
Right.
So, that was perfectly understandable why Hasenhüttl came up with those subs, but I thought that was particularly a fatigue issue, I think, at that point. And I think a lot of people were saying, we seem to sit off at 1-1 and go for the draw, but Salah basically scored because we massively overcommitted from our own corner, and left Bertrand with the unenviable task of trying to work out whether to mark Firmino or let Salah score.
On a yellow card, by the way.
Yeah, on a yellow card. And I think also that counted against Bednarek, didn't it, against Mane, when he got booked quite early on and then spent the rest of the game being like, I can't put a tackle in.
Right.
Oh, he's gone. So I think you can't be critical of what went on, and I think you have to realise that this is a team that will get better. Even before you start talking about recruitment in the summer, I think it's a team that will get better purely just by experience and by the kind of coaching we've seen from Hasenhüttl so far in terms of bringing players on and developing them. I thought if anyone had a kind of quite quiet game, it was James Ward-Prowse after his kind of recent exploits. But no, I think it was a really good fun watch. I'm kind of saying this retrospectively because I found a lot of it tense, but yeah, no, it was good, and I firmly encourage seeing more of it, I think.
Yeah, and I guess I had the advantage of watching, knowing the score, knowing how it ends. I'm not a person who usually reads the last page of a book or anything like that before I start, but like I said, there was going to be no way to get home, I think, and watch the game without knowing the result. So whatever. But I kind of had an idea of what of when the goals went in, and at least a little bit of an idea of how it happens before I ever sat down and watched it. But I think it allowed me just to enjoy the periods of where the ball just didn't seem to settle at all, and where Liverpool looked rattled. And I've admitted before to watching Liverpool, as a neutral, just watching the match when we're not playing or whatever, because I enjoy the high intensity kind of football, and at times they're really enjoyable to watch, and I really enjoyed us not letting them do that very often. And so whatever, I initially thought that Salah's goal, I thought that ball looked like it looped off of one of our defenders, and that was really frustrating for me. But watching the replay back, that didn't happen. He just somehow got that past everybody, and it was a good goal for him. So
yeah, it was quite good, unfortunately.
But I think for them, I thought Mane had a really good game. I thought he hurt us a lot. I think his challenge on the edge of the area there on JWP to kind of initially block that shot or that cross or whatever that was going to be, that led to the goal, I thought was really good. And I thought he won the ball back for them quite a number of times, and then gave us a lot of pressure down our their left-hand side, our right-hand side. So as much as people booed VVD, I think if we were going to boo on performance, we should have been booing Mane more often.
Yeah, I think so. But I find I struggle to boo Mane because it's just great to watch, and I don't have any kind of sour feeling about the way he left. I think it was all pretty above board, and
yeah,
he'd given him I think he'd given us as much as he could give us as a player in terms of where we were and what we were doing. So yeah, I kind of like him. I think he's having an amazing season, and I would love to see him at Real Madrid.
I did get to see him a couple of years ago when I saw Chelsea play Liverpool in LA during the summer, and he looked great. He had just made the move, and so it was enjoyable to go see him then. He was basically still wearing a Saints kit, so it was great. And now he just seems to have gone on and done a little bit. But do you have any final thoughts on the game before we answer? We got a lot of questions that I kind of want to get to some of them at least. I'm not sure I want to answer all of them.
No, I think that covers it all. I think, yeah, it'll be interesting to see kind of the way it progresses as we go on in terms of, when we have Ings fit and available. Although that Danny Ings, I've got to make it out Danny Ings for a second. Really like the guy. Think he's really talented, and I think if he was fully fit, he would have been a sniff at 20 million. But I have no idea why we've committed to buying him when he clearly has massive injury problems. And I would love to be in a position where you could build a team around him but it makes me really nervous about next season if we don't buy another striker, because I just can't see him being the kind of player you can rely on in terms of fitness. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Oh, I do. I like you said, he is a guy who is obviously extremely talented. He technically very good. I think does really well with a guy like Redmond playing up alongside him to drop deep and link up play and kind of set Redmond free. And he can score goals, but he's never fit. And that's going to be an issue because you look elsewhere in our team and we've gotten by this season with goals from midfield. And until Shane Long scored, we hadn't had a goal from a striker. And I don't know how, I can't remember the last one. And that's not a good, I think, plan going forward. I think you have to have a couple of other options of people you can put up there. And, Austin came in and scored goals initially, and I just don't think he fits the system. I don't think he is necessarily, I don't think he's the Ralph Hasenhüttl type player. Not that he can't maybe adjust that, but there's really no reason for me to think he will, given where he's at in his career and things like that.
And the underlying problem there is that he gets a stitch after about half an hour and can't really run. Like, I've never really had a problem with him in terms of what he could do in the box, because I think he can be like lethal. But if you're going to play one of these kind of high intensity systems where you are pressing the centre backs all the time, I just don't think he has the like underlying fitness to kind of keep going. He doesn't have the stamina, I don't think, for it. And nor am I completely convinced he's got the attitude for it either.
Right.
So yeah, I have a similar worry about Austin in terms of the way he fits, and I think it's only his wages that's really stopped him from moving on or down or somewhere else, really.
Which I think goes once again back to that recruitment and that era that we went through where we were handing out kind of big contracts to people for seemingly really bad reasons. Forster signed a big one. We just have a bunch of people on our books now that we can't possibly get rid of because nobody's going to pay them that. And if you're a professional footballer, kind of why would you take a giant pay cut to go elsewhere and uproot yourself and your family and everything else if you've been here for 2 or 3 years and you are enjoying the South Coast? Why would you change it? It doesn't. There's little incentive for them to do that. So that's our mistake, I guess, as a board and as an organization that we have to learn from and make sure we don't do it again.
Yeah, I think that's quite right. I think was the 8th highest wages in the league for a team that is a long way off that. And I think, as you say, it's the fact not necessarily that we've signed poor players, but we've signed poor players on such a big wage. So there we go. That will be something to look forward to in the summer, or not look forward to, as the case may be. So shall we get on with the questions then?
Yes. Okay. So we have some questions both from the Patreon members who get priority for having their questions answered, in addition to being involved in a private chat that we have going on Discord, as well as getting a bonus episode per month. So if anybody is interested in that, you can sign up by going to patreon.com/SFC delivery. I still feel awkward every time I say that, but I think if you talk to people who are in there, they'll say they enjoy it. And Kevin, who is one of the patrons, asks, what are your thoughts on the introduction of VAR next season? The Liverpool equalizer, would it have stood or not? But they maybe would have gotten a penalty for Keita, but I don't think there was enough contact for the penalty. Maybe he would have been booked retroactively for diving. I don't know if that's a thing, but the equalizer for Liverpool, if he doesn't get called offside immediately, because there was so much time that elapsed and the number of chances we had to clear the ball, I'm not sure it would have been called back. But I just think it's a mistake by the linesman initially that the big team does get the advantage there. It's not Shane Long running past the defender there. It's Mo Salah, and the guy's a human. That's going to influence things, and that's just kind of the way it goes. But it is frustrating when it hurts you the way it hurt us.
Yeah. Sorry. So what was the original question?
Sorry. The question was, what are your thoughts on the introduction of VAR next season? Do you think the equalizer would have stood, or do you think they would have gotten a penalty for the Keita incident? I assume is what he's talking about.
So yeah, I was hearing during the game that apparently they'd asked some referees that I presumably in the studio about this incident and whether VAR would have had an impact. And they were saying pretty much that because there were so many phases of play after the Salah offside incident, that would have still stood even with a video assistant. So I think you're quite right in the sense that VAR won't eliminate all of these kind of suspicions of Big Six bias, because there will still be things that leave kind of left to human judgment. And then you also have the fact that VAR may make certain decisions easier, but at the end of the day, there is still a huge amount of football kind of rules and regulations which are subjective, that are kind of about interpretation of certain rules and laws. And you often, even when we have, 20 replays from various different angles, pundits are still disagreeing about certain decisions. And I think you'd have found the same thing with that Keita decision. Had that gone to a VAR decision, I can totally see why it would be given. I can see why it wouldn't be given. I think the big issue in that incident was that Keita's shot or control or dribble went so far ahead of him. There is a question about whether he's in control of the ball. There's a question about actually how much contact there was. And I have to say, I found it really difficult to objectively watch any of those decisions while Jamie Carragher was shouting about X, Y, and Z. I think it's an absolute travesty that Sky Sports have an ex-player and an open fan of a team doing the commentary, particularly when they've taken Gary Neville to that game to do the coverage, who is also a better commentator. I got so angry by the end of it, just listening to Jamie Carragher. By the third goal, he is basically just openly celebrating. And as an opposition fan, I'm just thinking, I had to put it on mute by the end, because I was just like, I do not want to listen to Jamie Carragher go on and on and on. And then he did these awful, cringy interviews with Salah and Van Dijk at the end. It just ruined my evening. Not more than the result, but it was salt in the wounds, I have to say.
Well, see, we didn't have him on our coverage. We had Arlo White commentating, and he is anybody who's in the US or who's perhaps may or may not have found a stream of the American coverage on somewhere on the internet. You will know that he is the guy who does, they give him the big games. And so, with him on, he is the voice of kind of football for us. And he always does a really great job. But our Champions League coverage this season has been, Stuart Holden, who used to play in the Premier League and played for the Dynamo, and is one of the guys that I like to watch. He unfortunately had his career ended early due to injury, but he's really good friends with Steve Nash, who's a professional basketball player, or was a professional basketball player here, who is also a really big Spurs fan. And they did one of the Tottenham matches in the Champions League, and Steve Nash was doing the exact same thing. It was he was cheering, like he was actually cheering, and people were just ripping him apart on Twitter. And I don't think they've done a game together since, and they definitely should not have given him that game, because it just doesn't work. Like, you can't do that as a commentator. You have to be able to separate yourself. And I think maybe you just learn that, hey, maybe I can't do this. Maybe I have to just let it go, because I'm just too big of a fan of this team. And if somebody asked me to commentate on Saints, I don't think I could do it either, because I would definitely be, I don't know. I think I try really hard even on here to be somewhat impartial at points, but I don't know if I could do it in the moment.
No, and I think, it's quite all right having, if you have some kind of commentary system, which is, like a fan TV or something like that, which is specifically targeted at fans of a team, then that is absolutely fine by me. And, you crack on with that. But the idea that you have a fan commentating for, national television, I find ridiculous. And as for you saying, I don't know if I could do that, I definitely couldn't do that. I would spend the whole time just making really bizarre noises, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd be like, no. Anyway, I couldn't do it, but I just don't think it should be a thing unless you are kind of specifically targeting a kind of biased audience. So, the less that's said about that is
Yeah, probably.
But getting back to the original question, VAR I am strongly in favour of, but I'm not sure it would have resolved the issues we had last night.
No, and there will probably be things that come up that we don't foresee, and that's part of it. And I'm sure it'll be in a couple of years, people will want something different, and we'll get something different, and then we'll not like that either. So I think it's just the way it goes, and that's okay.
Part of football, really, isn't it? Having something to whine about.
Yeah. People can also send in questions on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, and Tim Marshall has sent one in here. And he says, what's your favorite and least favorite other manager in the Premier League? He said his would be Chris Hughton as best and Neil Warnock as worst. I don't know if you've had a chance to think about this one, and we have a lot, and we've been talking a while. We're not going to get to all of them, which is a good problem to have, but I will try to answer a couple of these in the newsletter, which people can also sign up for at southamptondelivery.com. So I don't know, best and worst other managers in terms of what you think. And if you don't have anybody off the top of your head and you need a second, I can go first if you want.
I've kind of thought about this, and I think it basically comes down kind of to geography, weirdly. So I'd say that I couldn't split to one of each, so I've got two of each.
Okay.
I think it's my two favourites at the moment are probably Mauricio Pochettino and Unai Emery. I think in terms of what they do, in terms of tactical development, in terms of bringing you through, I think Unai Emery's made a kind of massive call in terms of putting so much on kind of Guendouzi and Torreira and quite an interesting core of central midfield. And I think people thought that Arsenal would be much further off the pace for the Champions League places than they are. I think he's done really good things. And I also think he's like a really nice guy, and I kind of appreciate a lot of what he did at kind of Sevilla and stuff. And I don't think he was necessarily treated that well at PSG either. So Unai Emery and Pochettino, because I love him, and I kind of will always hark back to his Saints team as kind of the one that really established us as a really good team in the Premier League. And I like Harry Kane, and I like Eriksen and so on, and I think they have a really nice team. And then I think Merseyside is where I start to get very irritated. Jurgen Klopp and Marco Silva kind of really do my head in. I think Jurgen Klopp doesn't do enough to take responsibility when his team doesn't do that well. I think Pep Guardiola, by contrast, for the other team in the title race, is very good at saying where things have gone wrong and kind of calling players out, whereas Klopp seems to love blaming it on pretty much anything else, like the wind or the grass. I just get really fed up with that. And I find his celebrations kind of ridiculous. So that, and I think Marco Silva has got quite an ego, and I don't think he's got a huge amount of ability, but I could be wrong. So yeah, that's kind of North London versus Merseyside is kind of where my managerial preferences sit, I think.
Well, I'm with you on Pochettino. Obviously, his Southampton team is something that I think we're always going to enjoy looking back on, and we always wish him well, and I always want him to do better. And part of it might be that he's at Tottenham now, and my best friend's an Arsenal fan, but I don't know. But you bring up Unai Emery, who I think does a good job, and I'm looking down the list of managers here, and there's some of them that I don't like the way their team plays football, but I like people that seem to enjoy their job, and now looking at Jose Mourinho when he was at United, it just nobody looked like they were enjoying it. If you looked at our team under Mark Hughes, nobody looked like they were enjoying it. Now you look at kind of our players, and I think the turnaround at United is somewhat similar. And so just listening to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, just the way he talks and the way he seems to just really enjoy his life right now, I think that for me is something that I've enjoyed the difference. Also will totally admit that at one point I thought I was always told that I was heavily Norwegian. Turns out it's only 8%. I'm more French than that, which is not good. So maybe I'll change that. But at this point, I think I'm pulling for him on that. In terms of people that I dislike, by the same kind of token, guys like Sean Dyche or Neil Warnock, who just don't look like they enjoy anything. That really doesn't do it for me. And Maurizio Sarri about the same way. Both my parents smoke. I can't get with the the chewing of the cigarettes on the sideline. It freaks me out. So, and then also Brendan Rodgers, just the things he says and the way he acts and some of the looks he gives people. There's that gif of him going around shaking hands in a tunnel. He just looks so awkward that I don't ever want to, no. So all of them are on that, on that list.
Actually, I also quite like, although I am now aware that my list is turned to about 5 people. I like, I think Grazia at Watford has done quite a lot under the radar with Watford. And he does it with quite a lot of like, probably not charm, but probably like quite a lot of grace. I think Watford's often been a very kind of high pressure place, and I think he does quite a good job. But sorry for cutting across you there. It just popped into my head.
No, don't worry about that. It's all right. All right. So we have time for one more, because I'm supposed to go record the In That Number podcast, which will be out before this one. So it'll be whatever it is that it's weird. The way our release schedules all work, but we have time for one more, and I think you know which one's coming. And would you rather have a little pair of legs on your chin or a small pair of boobs on your forehead?
Yeah, so you might be aware, if you've seen the tweets on that my husband got quite into this dilemma, and I'm a little bit perturbed by it. And he said that he would go for the boobs on your forehead and own it and get breast enlargements and wear a bra, which was slightly bizarre, if I'm honest. And I'm having serious questions about him in general. But I'm going for the small pair of boobs on the basis I think they could be easily covered up. Whereas I'm thinking legs on your chin, no matter how small they are. I don't know, as a woman, what I'd do about that. Maybe as a guy, you can grow a beard. But I'm thinking, I don't know how you'd ever look normal. And I don't really know how that would ever be useful. So that said, neither would the boobs. So yeah, I'm going with that. The small pair of boobs on your forehead. What were your thoughts on that?
Well, I have a beard, but I was worried about potentially, like, do the legs grow hair? Like, do I also have to shave them?
That, yeah, probably.
Like, do the feet get cold? Like, do I have to wear socks? I don't want socks like on my face. That's weird. So it's really weird. But then I don't like being touched. Like, I'm not a big fan of strangers, touching me or hugging me or rubbing up against me or anything like that. So the idea that I would have boobs on my head, either one of these is going to lead to a lot of people staring at you. But I think the boobs on your head are more likely to just like have somebody, especially I'm a school teacher, just go like, I don't want that. I don't want I don't want either one of them, to be honest. But if I had to choose, I don't know. I don't know. It's so.
You can't sit on the fence. You have to tell me. I do love how seriously we're taking this, by the way.
This is the hardest I've thought about anything in a long time. I don't want to have to shave the legs. And sometimes I like to shave my beard, and I can always wear a hat. And I should wear a hat because I'm bald. And which is also complicating this thing, is that I have a bald head and it would just have 2 boobs, and it's weird. But I think I have to go that boobs, and I'll wear a hat every once in a while because I should protect my head from the sun anyway. And that would help. Yes, I have to go boobs on the forehead, even though I think all the evidence that I've given up until this point has pointed the opposite way. It shows you.
Yeah, I did think you were going to come down the other side of that.
Yeah, me too. Honestly, me too. But thank you to Ralph's Revolution, who is at St. Bannerman, for this, because this is obviously the highlight of most things. But anyway, you can always send in questions. I will answer some of the other ones in the newsletter this week because we did not get to them all. And I apologize for that, but we just basically I've enjoyed talking to you, Lucy. I always look forward to getting you on the show. And I know that sometimes it is a sacrifice for you for an hour or so of your time to do that. So I appreciate it.
That's no sacrifice at all. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
All right. We will talk to you next time, and have a good rest of your day.
You too.
That does it for episode 117 of the Southampton Delivery Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you've enjoyed it. Special thanks this week goes out to Lucy Highnett for taking time out of her day, for making Tom go away into the other room so she can talk to me about Saints losing to Liverpool. We kind of knew it was going to wind up this way, but nothing really to complain about. So thank you so much, Lucy. I appreciate your thoughtfulness. I appreciate how much time and consideration you put into this. I really do appreciate it. I know the listeners do too. That was evident by the number of questions that we had this week. So if you are a listener out there and you are not following Lucy Highnett, you can do that on Twitter at Lucy Highnett. The links are in the show notes. Those show notes are available if they're not below where you're listening to this and whatever app you're using. You can get them at southamptondelivery.com, which is also the place you can sign up to get the newsletter. And in that newsletter, we will answer some of the questions that you asked us on the show that we couldn't get to because there were too many because Lucy is so great. Basically, I'm just trying to get you to sign up for the newsletter. But if you do, you'll get one newsletter each and every week. It comes out on Friday mornings. It'll keep you up to date with what's going on. There's always a long read, some links back to old episodes and things that are of relevance, including matchday edits, predicted 11s, things like that. Things I think you will enjoy, all in your inbox, so you don't have to go searching for it all. Anyway, do that. Sign up for that at southamptondelivery.com. And thanks. As always, I'd like to thank the supporters of the show, not just you, the listeners, not just the patrons, but the people who make some of the things that make the show work, including Matt Beeling of the We Are Southampton page on Instagram. Matt does the logo for the show, and for all your matchday edits, polls, competitions, and more, be sure to check out the We Are Southampton page on Instagram. Likewise, the official partner of the show is the Southampton page. You can find them on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and that's where you should go for all of your Southampton FC news and needs. Jay and the rest of the team do a great job of keeping me and you and everybody else up to date with what's going on at Southampton. All music for the show comes courtesy of the Free Music Archive at freemusicarchive.org. The intro song is Epic Song by Boxcat Games, and the end of the show credits that you're listening to right now is Aim is True by Poddington Bear. If you are enjoying the show, please consider leaving a review on iTunes or wherever you listen. And if you're really enjoying it, like so much that you want more interaction, more shows, and all of that, check out patreon.com/SFC Delivery, where you can sign up to support the show, get some extra chats in, have priority for having your questions answered. And if you join the $5 a month tier, you get an extra podcast episode per month. So anyway, thank you so much for listening. I really do appreciate it. That is all for this week. We will be back next week after Wolves. And until then, remember that together, we march on.